Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Halatek Hall Show. We will be joined shortly by Wanda Wiedman, formerly of Our Turf Football, and then a newcomer to the show, Jack Wright from Bear Down Report, will be joining us in the second segment of the show this evening. So welcome aboard. Unfortunately, we have to talk about the debacle that was Sunday night in LA, and hopefully we've got some good news on the injury front ahead of their home opener against the Cincinnati Bengals. But we had three nice things to talk about, which we'll do on video right now. The first, of course, was the opening kickoff when I'm yelling at the screen, "What are you doing? Why would you take it from 8 yards out?" And he proceeds to go on a 53-yard return to take it close to midfield. Then, of course, on the second play from scrimmage, Montgomery unleashes a long run. Montgomery had over 100 yards rushing on the day and was by far the best weapon that we had the entire night. And of course, then there was this. And this, of course, is Justin Fields' first touchdown in his career, hopefully one of many. So we got to see Justin Fields on the field for 5 snaps, and that was it. So a little bit surprising that he was even on the field at all, but I think that will help bode well for the future. So if you bear with me 1 second, I'm going to reach out to our first guest to see where she is. So just hang on 1 second, because she has not logged in yet. So if you guys have any comments out there, fire away. Okay, so sorry about this, folks. All right, so let's get started. Unfortunately, we have to get started without our first guest, Wanda Wiedman, formerly of Our Turf Football, but we'll make the best of it. So we might as well get started with this. This was disturbing to me when you take a look at everything that was going on in his press conference earlier today. Alec Ogletree was on, and he I don't know, his quote to me was pretty disturbing. He said, "I think we did some things well on film, but it's never as good as you think, and it's never that bad. It's just kind of one of those things." But here's what really disturbed me. But I do think we could have played with a lot more energy than we did this past Sunday night. And I just absolutely went nuts when I saw this quote, because that's on the players. The coaches can motivate. The coaches can do all the training. They can put them in the right position, but to come out with a lack of energy, that's on the players. Every single one of them. So Armando, thanks for joining us as always. I hate how Nagy disrupted the flow of Andy Dalton in the offense. I can't disagree with you, Armando. I think that if you're going to put Fields in, you don't put him in for one play in the middle of a series that's actually going well. Now, the first play that he was in on the very first drive, threw a nice pass to Marquise Goodwin, got him inside the 5-yard line. But at that point, that's where Justin Fields is at his deadliest in terms of what he can do to a defense when you're 2 yards from the goal line. But they immediately take him out. And what happens? You get a change of cadence going from Dalton to Fields, back to Dalton. We get a false start penalty. Then we get an interception in the end zone that stymies that drive. And before you know it, just like that, it's 7-0, the LA Rams. Now, they got off to a quick lead, the Rams did, but the Bears came back. The Bears came back again. They kept on trading scores there for a little bit in the second and third quarter. It was a 2-score lead, and then it was 14 or 13-6, and then it was 20-7, and then we scored to make it 20-14. But then that's when the scoring dried up. The sad part about it was one of the keys that I talked about in my keys to the game last week was to eliminate 3-and-outs. And they did. They didn't have 1 3-and-out the entire game, except for maybe the last series. I can't remember because by then it was garbage time and it was near 2 minutes anyway. But they got into the LA Rams zone every time they had the ball. Every single time they had the ball. And one of my other keys was don't settle for a field goal. The sad part about it was they didn't settle for a field goal, but they didn't convert on 4th down when they needed to. So with that said, we're going to bring in our guest for this evening, our first guest, Wanda Wiedman from formerly of Our Turf Football. I guess it's good afternoon in LA. How are you, Wanda?
I'm good. How are you, Mike?
I'm well. I'm well. Had to get started a little bit there without you, but I'm so glad that you could finally join us. So we were just talking. I was just talking about the game, and my keys for the game last week were avoid 3-and-outs.
Right.
Check. They did that.
Yeah.
They avoided 3-and-outs. Don't settle for field goals. Check.
Right.
they did
that pretty well.
Those were my first 2 keys of the game last week, and it's like nailed it. But they just didn't capitalize. Yeah. How many times did they fail on 4th down? 4 times.
Yeah.
They failed on 4th down, counting the one at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. But even if you're not going to kick a field goal after they scored 14 points on you,
right,
we're on a roll. I think the prudent thing would have been to actually punt the ball and make them go 90 yards instead of going 50 yards, which they were doing all too easily. What are your
right, exactly.
So
Well, especially that first
Go ahead.
4 drives. On that first on the fourth drive there, it was kind of hard to tell what was going on when he went to throw in the end zone. You had Montgomery, Mooney, and Komet on the left side, and as they ran up, I couldn't tell after I was watching a lot of the replays whether or not Mooney was actually supposed to hook left to get the ball that Dalton was trying to throw. But then you kind of saw Komet come across the line as well. So I was thinking maybe the Komet was supposed to run across. It was either going to be a throw at him, or he was going to pull with Montgomery the defensive backs off of Mooney, and it would have been a clean catch in the end zone. So it's kind of hard to see what it was that they were trying to do there. Unfortunately, when you look at it, there was not a receiver, a player in that vicinity of those three defensive backs. So I kind of think and agree with you there that once those first two or three attempts on those 4th and 1s and 4 and 10, or the worst was the 4 and 15, and not kick for a field goal. It's forgetting we have Carlos Santos, and he's been pretty clutch in the 50 plus. So he would have probably gotten that in there and gotten at least a little more to where we weren't so far behind, and could have tried to do something there. But it's hard to tell what was going on in the plays. And now listening to what Allen Robinson was saying, that they were trying to get the ball down, but didn't get it capitalized in there, and a lot of that had to do with the defense in the Rams playing Tampa 4 or cover 4, and that kind of created that cone, kind of like dome type of thing over the
here's
field.
Where, Wanda, here's where, and I had some discussions on Twitter over the last couple of days. You still got to force the ball downfield.
Right.
I don't care if they've got 6 guys back there. Does that prevent, in desperation times when they've got 7 people lined up around the goal line for a Hail Mary? Do you not attempt the Hail Mary?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Still do it. So one thing that to my mind, if you've got your defenders, in a cover 4, and they're between 15 and 20 yards down the field, you've got a running start at those guys.
Right.
Okay. And
right.
you've got guys that can run a 4-2 running right at them. So
right.
They either have to turn and start running right away after about a second and a half,
right,
where you can then you can cut your route off, and you'll have 5 yards of separation between the guy in the front versus the guy in the back on either side, or you continue to run and try to blow past him, and at least force the envelope. And that's what really ticked me off. And it came out today that, of course, the Chicago Bears were the only team that didn't throw a ball in the air longer than 15 yards.
Yeah,
only
exactly right.
Team.
Yeah.
There's 2 things I want to go over before we really dig into the agenda I sent you, Wanda. Number one, I don't know if you saw the Alec Ogletree press conference from today, but I'm going to throw up a quote. It's in 2 parts. Okay. I'm going to throw up a quote that you can see on the screen. Talking a little bit, he's like, and this is cliche, you're never as bad as you look, but you're never as good as you think you are, kind of a thing.
Right.
But here's the part of the quote that really has me livid, is But I do think that we could have played with a lot more energy than we did this past Sunday night. And before you came on the air, I was talking about this. I said, you can coach, you can motivate, but when it comes to bringing the energy, that's on the players. And every single one of those players should be held accountable. Another thing that would be the third thing before we get to our agenda. Mm-hmm. This is Sean Desai's first year as defensive coordinator. And how many defensive starters were there until they had to be there for mandatory minicamp? One. That was it. Just one. Out of all the starters, I believe it was Roquan Smith was the only starter that showed up for OTAs. Shame on you, defense, because now it's all on the guys that didn't show up. And, and I got to give credit to Tayshaun Gibson, who tried to say, hey, it was on me. But it wasn't just on Tayshaun. There were so many mental errors and breakdowns in that game and missed tackles in that game Sunday night that, if it wasn't such an expensive television, I probably would have thrown things at it.
I hear you.
The last thing I wanted to go, you do some fantasy football, right?
Yes.
So this drives me nuts. I don't do fantasy football. I did it one time back in the Brett Favre era. I had Brett Favre as the quarterback, and my backup was Mark Brunell when he was the starter in Jacksonville. And every single game, I would go up against an opponent who had some guy on his team have a career day. And I'm like, screw it. I don't want to sit here and go, well, I want Arizona to lose, but I want DeAndre Hopkins to have 200 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
I want to do my thing, relax, watch the game, take a few notes for our shows, and just enjoy it.
Right.
The NFL Network came out with their stardoms and sit-ems just before we came on, and this is some funny stuff. There is no Bear in the stardoms.
Yep.
You would think that David Montgomery would have been a number 1 or number 2 stardom against that defense of Cincinnati's. The only player that they mentioned to start was our field goal kicker, who never saw the field last week. So that kind of baffled my mind.
Right.
For starting them, as far as Cincinnati was concerned, their rookie wide receiver, Jamar Chase, was a stardom. Mm-hmm. But Joe Burrows is a sit-em against the Bears defense. Now, tell me where that makes sense.
I know. It doesn't. It really doesn't make sense in some of these fantasy lineups where they're saying, well, if the Bears and they weren't even I don't know if they were they were sit-ems in the defense, but you can't. They're trying to give account to the fact that this was only the first game, so first game of the week. Okay, they're getting some of the cobwebs off. Maybe they're trying to get to understanding of what they need to do. So they're not going to rule out the Bears completely to where they're not going to pressure Joe Burrows. So that's the possibility. But you don't want to sit a wide receiver that that if Joe Burrows does get the ball out, you want to be able to get those points. So you want to play the top receiver that you can. With fantasy football, it's if you've got top receivers or top quarterbacks or top running backs, you never sit them. You always try to play them because in some way or another, they're going to score. I guarantee you there were a lot of people that were thinking that David Montgomery was not going to run for 108 yards because Nagy's not known for the run game, really. So was he going to do this? Was he going to push it through? And yet, to the surprise of many fantasy owners who had him, they went ahead, played him, and were, excited to see that they got, some points there. But there were several people that sat certain players and couldn't believe that they did, and now they wind up turning it around. So, it just all depends. Like I played Ryan Tannehill. I thought for sure Tannehill was going to ball out. This is Tennessee. They usually do. There was no reason why he wouldn't have. And to see the performance that happened, we were sacked 5 times. Obviously, my whole entire fantasy was just completely tanked last week. So it was just ugly. You get on, it was really ugly. So I was hopping on that waiver wire and grabbed a bunch of different players that I watched throughout to see how well they did. So then I'm like, okay, I want that guy. I want that guy. The neatest thing that the NFL fantasy did this year, and I want to put a plug in this, was that if you do see a player, they now allow you to get that player on the waiver wire, where before you couldn't do that. While the game was happening, that you can go ahead and submit a claim for that player
in the middle of the games.
Yeah. So
wow.
Now you don't get to play them, but you put a claim in so that the following week,
for next week.
You got them. Yeah.
That's wild. But fantasy football. When I met my wife 22 years ago, when she found out real quick how much of a sports fan I was. I don't think she knew what a touchdown was compared to a first down when I met her. But now she's down here watching the games with me. She is, unfortunately, I'm in a mixed marriage. She's a Packer fan living up here in Wisconsin. But it makes it for some fun times. Hey, Wanda, I talk about what you used to do with your writings at the all-woman website, Our Turf Football, and you took a little bit of a respite. You had some personal things that the family was going through, and right. So I kind of followed you closely like that. But I loved your writing. I think we even collaborated on a couple of your articles, which was a lot of fun for me. But you recently posted on Twitter that you were kind of looking to get back in the saddle, as it were. Yeah. So tell us about that. And what's going on?
Well, nothing's really come of it yet. I'm just kind of looking at some different options to see what fits into my schedule type of thing, because the family issues that I had still haven't gone away. I mean, it's more of a health issues with my husband. So just trying to see where I can fit some of that time in, but, being able to write, an article, at least one article, maybe once a week or so would be good. So if there's, obviously anyone listening and would like to get or have me on to write some stuff, I would not be opposed to doing that. I loved doing that, especially for the Bears, but any team in the NFL, because I love the game of football and I watch all the teams. So, it's been an exciting run. I did it for about 7 years to many different places. Not only did I write for Our Turf Football, but I did write for Fansided for a while, and a couple of other Last Words on Sports. There was another one too. Football Nation was the first one that I wrote for. So I met a couple of very fantastic writers and friends of mine. Tom Pollen is one of my favorite guys that we've talked Chicago sports a lot on. So hopefully that'll come up. We never know. but I'm open to it. So we'll see what happens.
There is a spot on Windy City Gridiron for fans to write articles. I'll send you the link. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, guys. Yeah, that one of our favorite guests, the editor-in-chief of Windy City Gridiron, Lester Wiltfong, told me about the site. I've posted a couple articles on that page. I think it's called Fan Post, but I'll send you a link to it. Ironically, I also wrote for Fansided for a little bit on their bear goggles.
Bear goggles on. Yeah.
I was writing for them for a while, and then Tick Splits happened, and I couldn't spare the time to do both. So I had to give up Fansided. So hey, getting back to the Rams game. We talked about earlier before you came on, we basically had three good plays. The opening kickoff return, Monty's first long run, the second play from scrimmage, and of course, Justin Fields' touchdown in the second half. But unfortunately, now we got to talk about the defense. And as you get, Armando kind of sums it up there and there. Eddie Jackson was nowhere to be found. I wish I had a film clip of the third down and 13 in the fourth quarter, where Cooper Kupp caught the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and Eddie Jackson makes a beeline for him, and all he has to do is break down and force him out of bounds after maybe a 3 or 4 yard gain, but he runs right past him.
Yeah.
And ends up out of bounds, and then he jukes a couple of people out, and a third and 12 or 13 became a 15-yard gain and a first down. And 5 plays later, they were in the end zone with the icing score of the game to make it what the final score was of 34 to 14. So even if they don't convert there, they still have to kick about a 50-yard field goal.
Right.
Okay. But the game's still within reach. It's only a 16-point game. It's a 2-score game instead of a 3-score game. And what little emotion the Bears showed all game long was absolutely gone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that play itself, I agree. I still have it embedded in my memory of Jackson running past. And it was it's supposed to have been a textbook tackle, just exactly how you stated, and that would have stopped it. But it's unfortunate because when you looked at it, even the comments from Cooper Kupp to say that I didn't realize till I watched the film how open I was.
Yeah,
that should be a complete embarrassment for those defensive players to be that open. When you looked and you saw where they were sitting on the field, it was just like, how do it's obviously broken coverage. Somebody dropped the ball, but these are vet players that know what their position is and should have been on it. Cooper Kupp, one of the top wide receivers, it's a no-brainer that he should be blanketed by a DB somewhere.
Yep. You got to have a double coverage. You got to have a guy. Rule number 1 as a safety is you never let a guy get behind you. Right. Never. But all of that led to a hell of a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt Stafford. So let's take a look at what in his 166th career start. In his 21st against the Bears, he had an all-time record for passer rating of 156, which is damn near perfect. Yep. 12.35 yards per attempt, No player with at least 20 pass attempts against the Bears has had a better rating since 1950, including Aaron Rodgers. And ironically, the Bears usually play Aaron Rodgers tough. His yards per attempt, was second since 1970 with a minimum of 20 attempts. The Bears allowed the Rams 7.7 yards per game or per play, which is the most they've given up in any game. In what, 5 or 6 years. So that was absolutely miserable. So now next up is Cincinnati. So let's talk a little bit about here's the Bears schedule. And of course, we've got that big L for game 1. Right. That's I hate to see. I thought the Bears were going to come out and just play with a passion and an enthusiasm that, that's all they've been talking about. I think that the loneliest place on earth Sunday night was where the Bears turnover bucket.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. But to sum it up, it was another poor game plan.
Yep.
The defense didn't show. When will Eddie Jackson show up? It's just boggles my mind. There was on Monday they brought in yesterday they brought in 3 defensive backs for a workout. Yeah. I can't remember their names, but I actually tweeted out that they brought in three defensive backs for a workout. Hopefully one of them will teach Eddie Jackson how to tackle.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So but we got to play. We got to play.
Yeah. And I think honestly, I think they got a rude awakening when they saw it. And I think we, sometimes you can't, I know I forgot that Patine is in there. And I think both Patine and Desai had some conversations. I think there were conversations with the defense and a lot of film showing where they failed with their energy, how they need to be coming out of the game. And being it was the first game of the season, it should have been like, high octane type of energy. So now they look the fools, and now they're going to come out in Cincinnati. And I think you're going to see a better defense against Cincinnati. I think they don't want to look the embarrassment defense to be able to get what they need to on that field. And so I think if they continue with some pressure up front, which is like Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn, some of these guys have really got to just push the envelope, figure a way to get around these interior linemen and do what you need to do to get past them and put the pressure on the quarterback. Akeem Hicks, he at least had an opportunity to do that against the Rams and got a sack in there. So, if they can continue with that consistency, we need to see again Roquan Smith out in the middle of the field, sideline to sideline. That's what he's known for. Some of the other, Alec Ogletree, he played phenomenal during the preseason. And I want to see that same type of energy against Cincinnati. So I think they're going to step up. I think they're going to do much better defensive-wise against Cincinnati. Offensively, we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, they have to step it up both sides of the ball. If you see that, this is a tweet that I threw out on Twitter earlier this week. I sat through some really brutal times. Yeah. Sitting up in the stands in Soldier Field, 1974. They 6 of their 14 games, they scored 10 points or less, including 3 shutouts. They only threw the ball for more than 200 yards in one game. Wow. In 1974. So I've sat there with boos cascading down on that team, but if the Bears start slow, especially with number 14 under center, and they have a couple of 3-and-outs in the first half, the boos are just going to be insane. So, one last, before we get to your keys of the game, Marquise Goodwin probably will not be allowed to have a press conference anymore the rest of the year after what he said. They were talking about Jalen Ramsey. He says he's a unique guy. He's an all-pro bowler. But then he goes on to say, and with us not running past 10 yards, well, I think that fell right into his hands, meaning Jalen Ramsey's. So you played right into what Jalen Ramsey is best at, which is closing on the ball. So pretty telling from one of your starting wide receivers. So Wanda, let's we've got to get to your keys to the game. So I've got them scrolling down on underneath, but fire away.
Yeah, so I think the first thing they need to do is there's obviously got to be better play calling on Nagy's part. They've got to pound that rock, keep Montgomery going. He's obviously hungry. He's been hungry all preseason. He couldn't wait to get those pads on and get in there. And he shows that he can get through there, get into those holes. So that offensive line needs to really gel, open up the opportunity for Montgomery to get through, and then they need to instill some bootleg options to get some of the RPO out, get some excitement in that passing game, and whether it's Dalton or Fields, somebody throw the ball down the field, and let's get some use of our speedy wide receivers. We've got 4 of them, so they should be able to at least catch the ball. We've got several tight ends that are obviously very good of catching the ball. So we can, we want to see that. There was that one, I have to throw that in there, that one play where Dalton forced the pass to Allen Robinson, who was draped by 2 linebackers, and onto the left of him is an open Cole Kmet. So, this is something that, Dalton needs to make sure he's got his progressions and check downs, and just, scan the field. Make sure you've got it. Yes, got to get the ball out quick, but look to see what your opportunities on. Then number 2, defense needs to show up, obviously, and pressure Burrows. Mac needs to get a sack in this game. I want to see Mac get a sack in this game and stop the naysayers, show that he's still an elite defensive defensive end that we need on this team.
Yeah, hey, Wanda, right before you go on to your next one, Khalil Mack was almost totally blanked on the score sheet Sunday night. Yeah. 0 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 hurries, 0 pressures. He finally, late in I believe in the fourth quarter, he actually got credited for half a tackle or an assist. And that was the only stat line for him the entire game. And that is completely unacceptable. I mean, for what it's worth, Quinn had a better game than Mack. He did have a half a sack with Hicks. Yeah. So those 2 guys were and I don't know if you saw the injury report, but I'm going to talk about the injury report later on with Jack Wright when he comes on in about 10 minutes. But Eddie Goldman practiced today. He was limited, and based on what we saw Sunday night, we definitely need him back. So. So your third key to Sunday's game is?
So my third key is more energy from the team. And I'm talking the entire team, not just the defense, the entire team. Fields would create that energy if he was able to start, pump up that team. Dalton doesn't exude that, unfortunately. When you see him in the huddle and you see him out there, there's not enough excitement out of him to pump the team, even on the sidelines. They got to get out there. They've got to just uplift each other and say, hey, we've got a game. Let's go, and get out there. And then my fourth one, final, would be that that the interception bucket needs to be filled somewhere. So the DB's got to get an interception. Somebody needs to get an interception, especially from Burrows, because since he likes to throw, there should be someone across the field, running across the field and getting that ball.
You talked a little bit about Justin Fields bringing energy, and the noise is getting louder.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 3 quotes here. Number one, Horsted. That's just the power of Justin Fields, and I believe that actually came from the last preseason game when he absolutely threw a dime on the run to Horsted. The first of his 3 touchdowns that day, which probably got him on the roster.
Yeah.
David Montgomery, he's got a natural aura about him, So and those are 2 of your offensive tools.
Yeah.
And then you've got Bill Lazor today.
Yeah.
Bill Lazor in his press conference today, he looked like he could be successful. It's playing it a little conservatively instead of coming out and saying what he really wants. But he did go on to say that nothing's too big for this kid.
Right.
So if there's nothing too big for this kid, I think you're going to see more than just a play here, a play there. I actually think that, and I think that Nagy kind of had this wry smile when he was talking about what Justin Fields did in the game and what that bodes for the future. I really expect to see Justin Fields get at least a series.
Yeah.
Where he comes in and plays the entire series. And if it's a blowout in either direction, then get him in there and let him play the fourth quarter, or at least the last half of the fourth quarter, to get him some of that exposure to the defenses and speed of the game that he has to be comfortable with.
Right. Exactly. No, I totally agree. I mean, if they're, you can't, I think it does Justin Fields a disservice if you're going to put him in for one play and then go back to Dalton. And to me, it's a waste of talent, and using him in these little packages. It's like, remember, it's almost like a reminder that he's the backup. He's not our future franchise quarterback. He's just a backup. So you're going to use him in these small little plays to get him some exposure. Look, he is our franchise quarterback going through. He is he's a first round pick. So he should at least have, like you said, a full series from first down to fourth down. And if he converts third down or fourth down, let him continue until that series is done and there's a touchdown at the end. Then if you want to put Dalton in, fine. But at this point, it's just either play him or don't. But, be consistent in that process with him, because I think it just does a disservice for that young man.
Absolutely. So Wanda's prediction for the game, I'm only going to give you one. So Wanda does anticipate. What was your caveats that if Justin Fields plays and Eddie Jackson shows up, that the Bears would win 27-24?
That is correct.
So I'm going to hold you to that one.
All right.
With that, Wanda, it's always a pleasure for you to be on our show. Hopefully we'll see you a couple more times during the season.
Sounds
And
good.
let us know as soon as you find a gig. And like I said, I'll send you, if you want me to, I'll send you a link where you can actually write an article.
Sure, absolutely.
On Windy City Gridiron's page. And our next guest is got a website, and maybe I'll introduce you to him. And Jack, how are you doing, my friend? Welcome to the Halatek Hall Show.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, Michael. Hi, Wanda. How are you guys tonight?
Good. How are you, Jack?
Hey,
Doing really
Wanda,
well.
I'm being an agent for Wanda. Wanda used to write for was it Bear Goggles?
No, well, it's somewhere on Fansided. I'm not sure which one it was.
So she wrote for Fansided.
Yeah.
She wrote for Our Turf Football. She took a break for a little bit over a year. She's good. So I might have her send you a copy of an article or two if you're looking for some writers for your website.
Absolutely. I mean, the beardownreport.com. Michael Page is our founding father. And I know he's always looking for, talented writers. And I just listened in a little bit to the two of you chatting, and it, clearly you've got some really excellent perspective, Wanda. It was a pleasure listening to you both talk about the Bears the last few minutes.
Thank you so much. I'll be staying tuned to listen to the rest of it. So.
Cool.
Hey, well, you can catch us. We're simulcasting now on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So, Wanda, thanks for joining us. And we're going to take a quick pause to hear from our sponsor, TickSplits.com. And when we come back, Jack and I are going to talk the rest of the show about whatever we can figure out between the debacle from Sunday and the preview of next week's game. So we'll be right back. Thanks, Wanda.
Thanks, guys.
I just heard my favorite band is in town. I'd love to get good seats, but everywhere I've looked, the ticket sites have crazy service fees.
Haven't you heard of TickSplits?
Who?
TickSplits. They don't gouge you with crazy fees. The price they advertise is the price you pay, plus a small delivery fee.
Never pay service fees again. Go to TIXBLITZ.com today. TickSplits.com. Guaranteed seats, low prices. That's TickSplits.com. Every ticket, every venue, everywhere.
And we're back with Jack Wright. Jack, again, like I said, welcome to the Halatek Hall Football Show family. It's great to have you on board. I want to give a shout out to Brandon Shagru, who put us together kind of the last minute. So what happened was WGN Radio's Kevin Wells was supposed to be on the show in this spot. But he had a conflict with work at WGN Radio, but thank God he let me know soon enough that we could find a most suitable replacement with Mr. Wright. So, Jack, tell us a little bit about you, how you became a Bears fan, your website, and anything else that's going on Bears related.
Great. Thanks again, Michael. I really appreciate that we were able to hook up and do this. I enjoy talking Bears football, and I can tell just from watching some of your shows and listening to you just in the last 30 or 40 minutes or so. You're a diehard. I love it. It's really cool to listen to you, and listening to you talk about being in the stands in the 70s. I can only imagine what some of those games must have been like in Old Soldier Field. Freezing cold, probably with cardboard under your bum and under your feet. I bet that's
there were times. Warm. Jack, I actually have been attending Bears games since the mid '60s.
Wow.
I won't tell you. No, I'll tell you. I'm 64 years old.
Okay.
I can remember back in the '60s and '70s. Bears home games were not broadcast on live television in the Chicago market. So you had to listen on the radio. And I can think all the way back to when I was 6 years old huddled up in my den at home in Hanover Park, listening to the Bears championship game against the New York Giants. My dad was a season ticket holder, and the kids would get to go to 1 or 2 games a year. But unfortunately, that game, his brother flew in from Detroit, and he was the guy that got to go to that game. So very disappointing on that end. But it got some. Vividly remember the very first game I can remember is 1965 when the Bears beat the Rams, ironically, which was Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus rookie year. So we can talk for hours, online or offline, Jack. Be more than happy to go over some of the things that I got to see, and fortunately for me, even at my age, my memory is still pretty good when it comes to Bears football. So it's a lot of fun, and yeah, you're absolutely right. The Chicago sports is a passion of mine. My dad grew up in Chicago. The only 2 times he was outside of the Chicagoland area was when he went to college in Champaign and when he went to World War II as a Marine in the Pacific Theater doing photo reconnaissance. Other than that, wow. He lived and breathed Chicago. I don't have the north-south side bias that so many people do in the Chicagoland area because, quite frankly, when he was on vacation, if the Sox were at home, we'd go to Comiskey Park for a Sox game. If the Cubs were at home, when he was on vacation, we'd go to a Cubs game. He was the season ticket holder for the Bears. The Bulls weren't around yet in the early 60s. My dad, unfortunately, died in 1972 when I was only 15 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was the one that actually turned him on to hockey. And remember one day he actually came home and he had met Tony Esposito and got me an autograph from Tony. And Tony Esposito was my idol. I have an autographed jersey. I'm going to have to send you some pictures of my. You can see behind me. I've got a few pictures of, and all of those pictures right there are autographed. The jersey behind me is autographed. I probably have 20 Bears jerseys that are autographed in my collection, as well as I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 footballs on my wall across from me that have several autographs, including Devin Hester and Matt Forte and Lance Briggs and Dick Butkus. I've got quite a collection. I'll have to send you some photos of my Halatek Hall man cave.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd love to see it. Those are some legends that you have, and especially if you were in person getting those autographs, that just had to be incredibly special. I take my kids to camp every year, but this year actually mostly in Bourbonnais, and that is so fun to watch them try to track down autographs. It was whether it was Mitch Trubisky at the time or Allen Robinson or just my son Connor especially is just he's a fiend. He's excellent at like wiggling his way to the front of the line and figuring out a way to get an autograph. So it's cool. I was just thinking too, if you couldn't watch the games on TV, I can't even imagine how special it was to watch when you got to go to a game. It's already a really special and unique experience, larger than life. But if you didn't have the opportunity to watch those games on television, I just think that must have made it so much exponentially more exciting to actually be in the stadium. I think that would be like really, really, truly amazing. Absolutely cool.
You were talking about getting autographs in person. I have 2 footballs on my collection. One I've got right here, and this has autographs from Alan Ellis, Jeff Choniak, Connie and Brittany Payton, Matt Forte, Dennis McKinnon, and there's a lot of names on here that I can't even read. There was a rookie by the name of Trey Brown. I actually got his autograph the same time I got Matt Forte's autograph. There's an old fart there that played for the Bears 1 or 2 years by the name of Ralph Jecka, who I believe has passed away now. And the day before those autographs happened, I'm sitting down at a table, and he came walking in with his granddaughter, and he looked like he was tired. He was. So I invited him to sit down with me, and he did, and we talked for a while. And his granddaughter said, "Are you okay?" He looked at me. He goes, "I'm fine." The next morning, go back to this, and this is when the Bears they used to have their convention at hotels, and then they stopped and they brought it to Soldier Field for the weekend, and I was there for both days of that weekend. And so the next morning, he's walking out with a couple of security guys and 2 other players. And hey, I'm like, "Ralph, how you doing?" He goes, "Oh, hey, Sonny, how you doing?" And he says, "Well, since you guys are here, do you mind if I get an autograph?" And one of the guys, which happened to be Matt Forte, is looking at the security guys. He goes, "Oh, we got to get going." He goes, and Ralph goes, "Nah, give him the autograph. He's a good guy." So it was Matt Forte and Trey Brown that I got the autographs from. That was a nice story. And then on my wall is another autograph, one football from the 100-year celebration in Rosemont. Yeah, I don't know if you went to that in June of 19. And I got Stephen Denmark's autograph because he was just walking around the lines that we were in line to get autographs, and my line just happened to be Devin Hester's. So those are the 2 footballs that I actually got and witnessed the autographs from. So
that's really cool.
A lot of fun, Jack. I could tell you, like I said, I could tell you stories. Whatever.
I will not even try to compete with you, but this is the only guy that I've got that's kind of similar. That, like I was saying, my son Connor, not only is he just kind of an autograph fiend, but he's also a spokesman for Shriners Hospital for Children.
Awesome.
Because he was born with a cleft lip and palate, and he had all of his work done there. So the Bears are super gracious when it comes to their time and their donations. All of the rookie Bears will come to Shriners Hospital, just outside the suburbs in Chicago. And so, he's got Khalil Mack on here, and I think there was like a little while where he was texting David Montgomery now and again, because he met David Montgomery, at that Shriners event, So, but very truly, I am not a one-upper, and I am not going to try to one-up you. You've got Gil Sayers behind you, for crying out loud. That is super cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. So Jack, tell me, where do you call home?
So I live in Yorkville. I've lived in this area most of my life, whether it was, the Salmonock area, Yorkville, for a while in Geneva. So I've always been a Midwestern kid. I've always been in this area.
Well, I was born in downtown Chicago. We lived in Elmwood Park, in the 2nd floor of a 2-flat above a drugstore. Moved out to the Schaumburg area in Hanover Park, where my youngest brother still lives in that same house. But I've lived in Ohio and Florida and Louisiana. My youngest son was born in the New Orleans area. And then in 1996, after being back home in the Chicagoland area, moved up to Wisconsin, where I live in a little town called Monroe, which is right north of the border, directly north of Freeport. If you know where Freeport,
the Freeport pretzels, I know it.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, my twin nieces went to Freeport High School. So and I've been here in Monroe now for 12 years. So the nice part about being here is I can still get down to the Schaumburg area where I went to Schaumburg High School, a Saxon, and I can get there in less than 2 hours. And the best, of course, I can get to Arlington Park, hint, hint, in less than 2 hours. So that's going to be interesting because the last day of the racing schedule at Arlington Park is September 25th. So I'm expecting to hear some things, and actually, that's Kevin was going to discuss that with me.
Yeah, I've been twice this year. I love going to Arlington. My family's gone for years, and I've gone twice this year. Once with my entire family, and then again with a friend of mine. It's a really odd kind of bittersweet feeling because you've been there. It's a beautiful building. It is a really amazing place to go if you like the ponies, if you like to go to the track at all. They did a great job after the fire of rebuilding it. And to think about the prospect of it getting torn down is a little tough for me because it seems like it'd be an awful shame to see it torn down as such a beautiful facility. But then on the same token, I think, well, I don't know if we would all agree, but I feel strongly that the Bears need a new stadium. They need something that looks like SoFi or maybe Minnesota's stadium where they can, host a lot of different events perhaps and make the entire area a business that focuses in on the stadium. We need to get off the grass. We need to get on some turf, in my opinion. They've done a better job with the Park District grass, but you've seen the sod monsters over the years and the difficulties that they've had. So it's all kind of bittersweet, I think, Michael. I mean, because it's also beautiful to go to a game right there on the lake, and they did a decent job on the inside of the stadium, but the capacity is just it's not big enough, I don't think. I, personally, not that I have any sway in it whatsoever, I'd love to see them do a stadium. I think it was just today, though, I saw that there was at least one company that was trying to bid on it to keep it a racetrack, but they've got that stipulation about, the casino. And so it looks like maybe that's going to fall through and it's just kind of a doomed scenario for buyers.
So we were going to talk about this tonight anyway. So it's my understanding through conversations with Kevin Wells from WGN Radio that shortly after the racing card is over, they're actually going to announce that there are 3 finalists, 2 of which have racing on the docket.
Okay.
And the Bears would be the third option. Interestingly enough, when the bidding process ended in the second week of June, we've been talking about this that long. The following Monday, the City Council of Arlington Heights approved a measure that would allow for the building of a football stadium on that property. Now, it's 325 or 26 acres. There's room enough to keep the racetrack there if the Bears so desired to, which is kind of interesting because there's all kinds of property to the north or to the east of the racetrack.
Right.
That's still part of that massive complex. The other line of thought is to build the stadium where the racetrack is, and then you have room for shopping and hotels, et cetera, and a casino, of course, on the property as well. So it's going to start getting pretty interesting here in the next 2 weeks or so. So when Kevin's back on the show, make sure you tune in.
Yeah, I'd love to hear his insider information on that. It's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves, how it plays out.
Absolutely. So I think that Wanda and I kind of beat the LA game to you don't want to beat a dead horse anymore. So why don't we get right into your keys for the game for this week?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be an awfully tough game. I think originally in my preseason predictions, I had us with a home win against the Cincinnati Bungles, as I like to call them. And now I'm concerned. I think I watched quite a bit of that Cincinnati game last weekend, and they look good, all phases. So what I had was pressure Joe Burrows to pay that much money in your defensive line, to have such a minimal impact when it comes to sacks and hurries, for instance, or passes knocked down. That's a problem. And last week, Burrows posted career bests in QBR, completion percentage, and yards per attempt. He went 128.8 QBR, 74.1% completion rate, 9.6 yards per attempt. And if he's not pressured, and you consider, the status of our suspect secondary, that's going to be a problem. So number one, I had pressure Joe Burrows. Secondarily, I had stopped the run. Joe Mixon went 29 carries for 127 yards last week, which was the highest total of any player in week one. And it's interesting is the Bears did a nice job of stopping the run throughout the game last week, except for when it mattered. They failed to bottle up Henderson when it mattered most in the fourth quarter, and the Rams were able to just eat time. So it'd be interesting to see what we can do against Mixon in the run. Play vastly better in the secondary. I mean, I think probably that's like Captain Obvious, the most blatantly obvious thing that needs to happen. But what we saw last week was, the Bears secondary manufactured blown coverages, poor tackling, an inability to create turnovers. And if you consider Cincinnati's Jamar Chase tallied 5 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown in his first NFL game. And after the game, he was quoted as saying, "I'm trying to break every record I can." He's electric, and he might sadly break some of those records against our secondary. The fourth one that I had was score points. And I know that seems so blatantly obvious, but, the offense for the Bears under Matt Nagy has been poor. It's not been good. It's ranked low every single year. So I've got fourth point, just score points, run the ball a lot. We saw last week, Monty had 82 yards after he was contacted. Bears had a 5.2 per rush average. Let's run the ball. I mean, not only is it just kind of like old school Bears football, but I think it will allow for us to keep the ball out of Cincinnati's hand. So I think it's time that Coach Nagy finally calls a game that's predicated on flow, rhythm, and consistency, and not cuteness. This offense has received so much of the franchise's attention in recent years, and the Bears are the offense is going to have to produce and I think an unprecedented level. We need more than 14 points. We need to control the ball. We need to see some flow. We need to take some deep shots. We need to see some big plays. The offense is on the hot seat. I think Matt Nagy is on the hot seat. I think I saw just before I came on the odds for him to be fired are some of the best odds in Vegas right now. So, if the Bears can do all of those things, they can win the game. I don't know as if I see them pivoting in all of those areas, in 1 week's time. I think we're talking about some pretty serious deficiencies, especially at the secondary. And I don't even know if they've got the personnel to be able to shore that up in 1 week's time. So I'm concerned, Michael. I'm concerned about the Cincinnati Bengals coming into to Soldier Field on Sunday at noon.
And we thought that would be one of the weaker teams on the schedule when the schedule first came out.
Yes.
Interesting, great insight, Jack. My keys to the game is keep doing what worked with David Montgomery. Obviously you've already touched base on that. Use number 2, use your speed at wide receiver and take shots deep in the passing game. Marquise Goodwin, did you happen to catch his presser today?
Yeah, that was a lot of honesty, wasn't it? Yikes.
Whoa, man. I think we played right into Jalen Ramsey's hands, basically to paraphrase what he said. So I'm thinking that'll be the last press conference the Bears will let him have during the season.
It might be. I mean, and Michael, I don't know. Like, honestly, I played a little football in college. I coached for a lot of years. I don't try to use my experience as a comparison for what they do in the NFL. I realize it's completely different worlds, but I do know as an offensive coordinator, you stay up dreaming about throwing the ball deep, play action, deep down the seam. So do your wide receivers. They stay up dreaming about that. And so do your quarterback. If you don't try to press the field deeply, then your safeties are going to start creeping up. And then all they need to do is defend, run, and short pass. Even if you don't complete a long ball, go ahead and throw one. At least, I mean, this is seriously like, I'm upset about this. How a guy can be a head coach and an offensive coordinator in the NFL and not throw a single ball over 16 yards. It just completely baffles me. Not to avoid taking a single deep ball, a shot deep at the entire game with all that speed. Now, maybe you'd say offensive line. Maybe you'd say he doesn't have enough time. You can take a 3-step drop and you can throw it out to some of those, 4.1 40 wide receivers, assuming they don't get jammed and, whatever the situation. Anyway, let's take some deep shots.
Absolutely. You're right. Even if you took a 5-step drop and immediately released the ball, okay, the average time, if I heard this correct, the average time that Dalton used to throw a ball was just under 2.5 seconds, which was the fastest of all 32 teams this weekend. Okay. And how long does it take for a ball to get 50 yards downfield? 2 seconds? 2.5 seconds?
Yeah.
So that's 5 seconds. From the snap of the ball till that ball hits 50 yards downfield that your 4-2 guy can run underneath. And I was talking with Wanda earlier. I don't know if you caught it. I said, if you've got a safety that's sitting at 20 yards, he's got to do one of two things. He's got to turn and run 10 yards before, within the receiver getting to within 10 yards of him, or he's going to blow right past him. Okay. So you can either throw the ball long, or you can throw it in the bucket between the safety and the cornerback, because you're going to have a 10-yard cushion on either side of the ball, because the safety had to turn to start getting up to speed before the receiver blows past him. So I agree with you 1,000,000%. They've got to at least force the envelope. They have to open up the playbook. Key number 3, they have to open up the playbook. Have you been covering the Bears? How long has your website been up?
I want to say that Michael Page started it in 2019 or 2020.
Okay. So when John Fox was the head coach, I think it was the last year he was the head coach, he had a press conference. And of course, we're talking about conservative game plans, which seems to be a thorn in our side for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. He said the defense predicated us to be conservative. Okay. When Matt Nagy first took over the head coach, one of the first things he said, and maybe one of his very first, if not the first press conference, was, we need to dictate on offense. Remember that. We need to dictate. Okay. And so what do they do on opening night? They don't do a thing predicated on what they were going to see from the Rams defense. Blows my mind. I don't know. You said you've been around the Midwest for a long time. I don't know how old you are, and I'm not going to ask you, but I was in the stands for the mid '80s teams, from '83, '84, and '85. And Buddy Ryan, although he was he was a genius. He was a defensive guru, but he would be very magnanimous about it. Say, I'm not that smart. He said, if we can't get to the quarterback with 4 guys, we're going to send 5. If we can't get to him with 5, we're going to send 6.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't get to him with 6, we're going to send 7. If we need to send more than they have blockers, that's what I'm going to do to get pressure on the quarterback. And that 46 defense was run to perfection in 1985. And I'm not saying do a 46 against Burrow because it's been defended well by the offenses for years. But I think you get my point. You've got to have a Buddy Ryan like mentality to this particular game, because Burrow hasn't seen every defense in the league, and you should be able to throw some coverages. Sean Desai has to be absolutely livid with the performance of his defense, especially the defensive backs, because that's who he coached before he became the coordinator. He was on the defensive backs as far as coaches were concerned. They have to get to Burrow. Like you said, Wanda said earlier, Mac has to get a sack. Well, more than Mac, Quinn outplayed Khalil Mack in Sunday night's game. That's how poorly Khalil Mack, he didn't barely sniff the score sheet. He had 1 assist. He had 0 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 pressure, 0 hurries. Of course, no forced fumbles, no tackles for losses. That's how poorly Khalil Mack, and you can't blame it on the fact that Hakeem Nicks wasn't there, because he was, and Hicks actually played a pretty decent game, except for the roughing the passer penalty. He had. I don't know if
can I share some opinions on Mac with you, Michael? Just because it's something I've been honed in on. Is that okay if I share some?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been honing on him for the last couple of years. My understanding was that perhaps he was injured for much of the year last year. And so when I was critical of him, I kind of had to back off on it a little bit. But let me just throw some ideas out to you. So if I said the Cardinals, Chandler Jones, Bills, Josh Allen, Cowboys, Dak Prescott, Broncos, Von Miller, Packers, Aaron Rodgers, Casey Mahomes, the Chargers, Joey Bosa, the Rams, Stafford. You get the idea. Those are all the highest paid guys on those teams. And I just kept going through the list. And the highest paid guy on our team is Mac. And so what you expect to see out of your highest paid player is direct impact on the game. And if you go back just a couple of minutes to the points that you made about his stat line, to have your highest paid player, your end rusher, the guy who's supposed to be your beast, do really nothing most of the game, that's rough. That's detrimental. And I've heard people say, well, he gets double teamed a lot. He's double teamed about 22% of the time. I know Donald is an interior rusher, but he gets double teamed way more frequently and has a much better run stop rate and a much better pass rush rate than Mac does. I'm starting to worry about Mac. I think he's a great guy, like personally. He's like very giving of his time and to charities and so forth. So it's not personal about him, but I think there's starting to be a regression here, Michael. If you take a look at over the years, and he came to us, I believe his first year here was 2018. So in terms of tackles, in 2015, he had 77. In 2016, he had 73. In 2017, he had 78. Comes to the Bears in 2018, 47. 19, 47, 20, 50. How about sacks? 2015, 15 sacks. 2016, 11 sacks. 2017, 10 and a half. First year with the Bears, big splash. We all loved it. It was amazing. 12 and a half sacks. Now regression. 2019, 8.5 sacks. 2020, 9 sacks. And so, I mean, I'm starting to get worried. I don't know if we're just seeing like outright regression. The last thing I'll say about this is, do you remember when Warren Sapp was playing defensive line and they would show him and they would talk about how he always had a high motor? It was one of those things we joked about because that's all they talked about was Warren Sapp, high motor. But truly, if you watched Warren Sapp play, not only was he rushing the passer with brute force, with violence, with urgency, but also if it was a run play that went away from him, I know you remember this, Michael, he would be 20 yards down the field pursuing and tackling a running back or causing the fumble. I've watched the all 22 on Mac quite a bit, and I see none of that from him. I see none of that tenacity. And so I think people like to just kind of talk about how he's good and how he's frequently double teamed and how he's maybe injured, but I wonder how many people actually watch him play and something's going on. Either it's age, regression, or injury. I'm not sure what, but if he doesn't show up and Robert Quinn is going to continue to be Robert Quinn, I don't know what we're going to do about a pass rush. We're in trouble.
You're absolutely right. You kind of nice segue. Here is today's injury report, and for the first time that I can recall, because I think Khalil Mack was on the injury report almost every week last year. The good news was Eddie Goldman participated, even though it was limited. Jason Peters participated, even though it was a little bit, he was limited. And Robert Quinn, they're going to keep him limited while he's nursing that back. But he played well. You know, the good news was the fact that only Larry Borum did not participate because of an injury. Jimmy Graham was out on a Veterans Day. But to see that Peters was back and Goldman was back, good news for this Sunday.
Absolutely. This Eddie Goldman is a bit of a mystery. You know, I think they said that he injured himself in practice last Monday, but they didn't. Was it his? I believe it was his knee. But
yeah, knee and an ankle.
Yeah,
was
a rough Monday practice.
The report that came out. So, a lot of good stuff. Hey, we talked about this earlier with Wanda, but I wanted to get your take because we were talking about enthusiasm. Okay, and I don't know if you caught Alec Ogletree's presser today, but he said a couple of things that this one, yeah, okay, I agree, and it's kind of a cliche, but you're never as bad as you thought you were, and you're never as good as you think you are, and I'm paraphrasing. But then he went on to say this about Sunday's performance, and it absolutely just frosted me, Jack. I was livid when I first saw this. Maybe we could have played with a little bit more energy. Opening night, national audience, brand new defensive coordinator. You've got offensive tools like you have never seen before. You had 4 games out of 5 to end the season where your offense put up 30 points, or more. Okay. And Jack, like I said, I don't know how old you are, but the last time that the Bears scored 30 points in 4 consecutive games was in 1965. Okay. And they actually scored 40 or more in 5 out of 6 games, including the 6 touchdown game of Gale Sayers when they destroyed the 49ers 61-14 at Wrigley Field. That's how well this offense played at the end of last year. And you've got arguably a better quarterback. You've got arguably better receivers. Let's put it to you another way. Javon Wims and Riley Ridley are free agents. They have not been picked up by any other team. Okay. You got Anthony Miller is gone. You've got Goodwin and Bird and Mooney on the field almost full time. I don't have the snap counts in front of me. And of course, I haven't even mentioned Allen Robinson yet. and you only muster 14 points after getting into Rams territory on every single possession, save for the last one, when it was already too late, and they gave up another fourth down, right at the 2-minute warning, and ended the game. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this last sentence of Ogletree's, because you can be coached up, you can have all the best techniques in the world, but bringing the energy is on you, the player. So every single man in that locker room has to wear this hat for another 4 days until they get on the field again noon Sunday.
Yeah, it's telling. I remember years ago, my dad, who, I mean, if we go all the way back to the beginning, what made me a Bears fan, really in love football, was my father. We went, to Platteville all the time, and we went to training camp nearly every year. And, I watched the really bad, really bad, late 70s, early 80s Bears teams. So it was, especially joyful when they won in 85, because you went through the tough times where all you really had to watch was Peyton, But my point, I guess, getting back to your question, is that my father took my brother and I to go see Coach Dicta speak. And I remember one of the questions it was a dinner and a speech. And I remember that one of the guests asked him, "Hey, Coach, what do you do to motivate your players?" And in true, Coach Dicta style, he said, I don't do much of anything to motivate my players. They are professional athletes playing one of the greatest games there is to play, on typically a Sunday afternoon. And if I'm in a position where I have to motivate them to play football, then there's probably a good chance they're not going to be on my roster. So some of that I do think is internal, and having an internal drive to love the game and to continue to play the game with vigor. But I also think a big part of that is vigor and flow and momentum of the game. And I think once again, that's a real flaw in the Matt Nagy era. Even on that very first drive, you get, a decent short pass, you get a long run from Monty, and then in usual style, instead of it just being like, okay, let's keep going, bang, 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 and score, huge momentum. That gets the defense fired up. That gets the special teams fired up. That gets the fans fired up. And to me, that's a part of the electricity. Sometimes on the field, you can be in a situation where maybe fear creeps in, and maybe you think about losing, and maybe you think about the fact that you might get beat today. But that doesn't happen when there's good flow, and there's excitement, and there's quick scores, and there's big hits. And that just evolves into confident football players who feel good about what they're doing and then bring that energy. But if there's, seems to be inconsistency, or they're looking at the head guy and there seems to be uncertainty, and he seems to be vacillating with his play calling and not having a real good identity. You'll hear me say all the time, Michael, I think a dead fish stinks from the head down. So someone sets the tone in that building, and that's, in this case, Matt Nagy. So if there's not energy, then that's on him. The buck stops there.
When we were watching film during camp with Sean Desai just running all over the field, and the energy level from him was absolutely like nothing. I haven't seen an energy level like that realistically since Mark Trestman was running up and down the field in Bourbonnais, getting his offense going. Yeah, so obviously he lost the locker room in the second year of his tenure, became a disaster, which led us to what we have now after the Fox debacle. Our friend Armando just put up a thing about the Abe Gibran years. Let me see if I can throw. Here it is. He was 72, 73, and 74. 1974, Jack. The Bears, I believe 6 of the 14 games, they had one game of 10 points, 3 games of shutouts where they were shut out. Okay. And the other 2 where they scored like 6 or 7 or whatever it was. That's how brutal. Their passing attack. What was it? The Notre Dame coach the other day got harassed because he tried to make fun of the team, and they were talking about their execution. And he says, "I'm in favor of it," which was he was stealing a line from the Tampa coach back in the 70s when they were 0-14. When he asked about the line's execution, he said, "I'm in favor of it." The Bears only had 1 game all year in 1974 where their passing yards exceeded 200. That's how brutal it was.
It was rough.
So,
it was very, I think that's the thing about being a Chicago sports fan. I think, if you're a White Sox fan, you went through years of, drought and difficulty, and then 05 hits and, the planets align, and it's a beautiful thing. Cubs fans, a lot of like baseball purgatory for a long, long time. And 2016 hit. I guess the thing that's frustrating, if you talk about the Bears specifically, is in a market such as Chicago, I don't quite understand why we can't have the same level of continued success. I don't quite understand why it is that we sit at mediocre so comfortably. I mean, I do have some theories about like the McCaskey family and their ownership, but I said the other day on our podcast, if there's a team that seems to be an expert in mediocrity from the top down, from the McCaskeys to Ryan Pace to Matt Nagy to the players on the field, it seems to be them. And I don't know. In the modern era of sports, it sounds to me like you're either rebuilding or you're vying for a championship, but you're not in the middle. And I feel like we're still like those old Cubs teams or those old Sox teams where they would just buy one really talented, name or 2 talented names to kind of keep people like pacified, but they weren't rebuilding and they weren't vying for a championship. That's our Bears. That's really our Bears. And then that's tiresome. We need to see that change.
The Bears did that in 2009. Okay. They acquired a guy by the name of Jay Cutler. April of 2009. I know exactly where I was when it came over the radio on the score, and they never built an offense around it. They little dribs and drabs. Towards they did have Forte a little bit. They did ended up with Marshall and they ended up with Alshon, but he started his career with Johnny Knox and Devin Hester as his wide receivers. Devin Hester was not a wide receiver. He was the best return man we've ever seen, but he wasn't an effective wide unless he's like, you just go long and run underneath it.
Right.
Yeah. But he just wasn't a wide. He wanted to be paid like a wide receiver, but he wasn't at least a good one.
He's a Hall of Fame return man. At least.
Oh, absolutely, so. And he
ought to be in soon.
Yeah, well, he would be eligible for this coming induction ceremony. So here's where we're going to get excitement from.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
JF1. That's what we call him all the time. JF1.
So it's interesting now. Couple of things that have come to light when it comes to Justin Fields. And I'm specifically talking about comments being made about Justin from, and I'm going to throw up 2 players. Jesper Horsted. That's just the power of Justin Fields. David Montgomery. Fields has a natural aura about him. And then just today, Bill Lazor. It looks like he could be successful. Of course, he's got to hedge his bet because he's got to report to Nagy. But nothing was too big for Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but that speaks volumes to me, Jack. I don't know about you, but I'm telling you, I think that absolutely speaks volumes about Justin Fields, and we should expect to see him on the field sooner than later.
I think so. I mean, I do think he has it. I think he makes it look easy. He's natural. He's very athletic. He meets the moment. I've seen him in 2 preseason games, which I know aren't a real good barometer for the regular season, but he was not phased even a little bit. Super fast, super agile. I think, as I've been thinking about it more and more, and I've been a proponent of him sitting for as long as possible and learning. And I think really Andy Dalton's starting is not about a promise that was made to Andy Dalton, but more about a protection of what could be your franchise quarterback and the ability for the franchise to be able to protect that JF1 and the ability for JF1 to be able to protect himself. Mm-hmm. Based on, we saw him just get hammered, in that one preseason game because he didn't read an outside blitzer, it didn't see the hot route. And
he read it the very next time they threw it at him, though. He learned quick. He does learn very quickly. But and here's the other problem in that. Part of me says this guy's electric. He is going to be an excellent quarterback, and it would be fun to watch him play right now. But then on the same token, I try to think about what quarterbacks have been super successful under our current head coach. None. So far, none. But none of them have had the talent that Fields has. True,
and maybe not the same. Besides the offensive line, maybe not the same weapons either. With Monty and Allen Robinson and Kmet, that bodes well.
And Mooney. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit there, Jack. No, you haven't. But I have talked about that exact scenario on our show off and on for the last 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's not a matter of, is he gonna start week 4? Is he gonna start week 6? Is he gonna start on Halloween against the 49ers? Is he gonna start after the bye week? He's going to start when the coaches feel the offensive line has gelled to give him the protection he needs to be able to get in the pocket. Because he likes to survey the field. He goes through his. I haven't seen a Bears quarterback go through progressions as well as Justin Fields has in just a little amount of time that I've watched it. Obviously, the 3 preseason games and is all I've got to go on. But he did a great job going through his progressions. When he made a mistake, he learned from it. Now, I don't know if you saw the 2-part series on YouTube of Kurt Warner talking about Justin Fields, what he saw that he liked, and then the second segment was things he needed to work on, which is go through the progressions, find the open guy instead of running. And he's going to have to learn that, obviously. But how often do we see Patrick Mahomes escape the pocket, find an open guy, throw the ball sidearm around a defender to his outlet guy? And this is the stuff that Fields can do. So, and I talked about this with Wanda earlier. I've been a Bears fan almost 60 years. And I was in the stands for the Abe Gibran era back in the 70s. Okay. And I saw, I went to 2 games in 1969 when they finished 1-13 and were absolutely brutal. I have sat through plenty and been a part of some some of the loudest booing I've ever heard. None of that will come close to what the Bears fans are going to do Sunday if they start slow on either side of the ball. But specifically, if Andy Dalton goes 3 and out in any one of his first 2 or 3 possessions, and God forbid he goes 3 and out in 2 straight possessions early in the game, the booing is just going to be crazy at Soldier Field.
No doubt. And I mean, and I think ultimately, you buy a ticket. I do believe that you have the right to do that for sure.
Absolutely.
But show me a head coach that's going to make a decision like this based on fan boos, and I'll show you a head coach I don't personally want to be the head of my team. Right? I mean, I think if Matt Nagy's decided that he has a specific design for the way in which Fields will be, entered into into regular playing time, then I agree with what you said earlier. Then that needs to be, then stick with it, because we got the pick right. He fell in our laps. I think truly is the real deal. He's got the pedigree. He clearly had a successful career when he was at Ohio State. I think you're right. He can, go through progressions at a young age better than most guys. His acumen is off the charts on all the tests that he took. All of that is true. And that's why I know it's hard for Bears fans, me included, to wait. But the other thing about this too, Michael, is what do you want him to be? Do you want him to be a pocket passer, or do you want him to be, Lamar Jackson? I think Nagy sees him in an offense that includes him mostly being a pocket passer. So that means if he starts playing, this week or the next week, in my opinion, that is going to inhibit his ability to be a quality long-term pocket passer, because he's going to be running for his life a little bit and maybe learn some bad habits. That if you want to design some rollouts, if you want to design some read options where he's running the ball, and you want to do kind of a hybrid of him being like a little bit of Lamar Jackson, a little bit of a pocket passer, great. But I think the problem with Nagy is he gets a vision of some sort, and a coach's job is to put players in a position to be successful. Is Matt Nagy the guy to put Justin Fields in a position to be successful?
Well, he has to be, or else he's going to be gone after the end of this year. And then we've got another issue of retooling. But there have been some recent successes of first-year coaches making the playoffs. Sure. So that's an axe that Ryan Pace has to grind if he has the opportunity. But going back to what you talked about, the head coach maybe pulling the trigger on Fields because of boos, we still have to worry about there's a lady that's sitting up in the suites, okay, that has her name all over this team by the name of Virginia. Yes. And it will absolutely destroy her to have to sit through that. So that said, I don't think she's going to mandate, but I think that there is pressure from all sides on Matt Nagy to get just, and when press athletes, you saw the quotes from some of the guys earlier today. The pressure is there, and he's probably going to have to act on it sooner than later. Earlier in the show, Wanda gave us her prediction for the game, and she's got the Bears eking out a victory 27-24. I've got the Bears 24-20, and I can't say saving the best for last, Jack. But
that's not going to be popular, is it, Michael?
Yeah. Well, I almost had this same score for the game Sunday night, except for I had the Bears winning 34-20. Had the score almost dead right, just happened to be the wrong team on the winning side. So you were picking the Bengals 31-14. If that's the case, like we talked about when you first came on, Matt Nagy is leading in the clubhouse with a 4-1 odds about being the first head coach to be fired in 2021. And if he goes into this game and their team lays an egg, and then they go to Cleveland and they lay another egg, they're 0-3, and it's likely that Bill Lazor is going to be assuming the role of interim head coach going into Detroit week. And then I think you'll see, if that's the case, I think you'll definitely see Justin Fields will be named the starting quarterback from then out, because you just got to see what you've got.
And who knows, how that's going to play. And by the way, I hope my prediction's wrong. And anytime I pick against the Bears, I want to be real wrong, and I'm totally fine. I'll accept that if I'm wrong. But maybe at the very least, what we'll get Laser back calling the offense. I mean, we on our show, Ryan Dangle, good friend of mine, and he's on the podcast with me, has been saying for a long time, Matt Nagy, good job, good head coach, terrible play caller. And I think that's been proven. I think the way that Bill Lazor handled the play calling, at the end of the year last year, combined with, and again, I'm stealing Ryan's points here full out, and he's commenting, which is cool. Hey, Ryan, the combination of Lazor playing calls more effectively and understanding game flow. And we saw Matt Nagy be a better head coach when he wasn't playing calls. The combination was, I think, pretty potent there at the end of the year. So, I mean, who knows if he gets fired? I'm never one to call for the coach's head. I coached for a long time. It's really hard. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to be like, he's a bum, he should be fired. I don't know his world. I've never been an NFL head coach. I can't imagine the pressure that's on him. When you hear him mic'd up, he's incredibly likable. He has great energy. He makes excellent points when he's actually coaching on the field, giving pointers and tips to his players. I think they had him mic'd up during one of the practices in preseason, and I was really impressed, right? I mean, he's a good dude with a lot of football knowledge and seems to have a great relationship with the players on the field, and seems to have a knack for being able to coach on the run somehow or another. He's an enigma, isn't he? Because somehow or another, this just isn't, it's not coming to fruition when it comes to the play on the field and to the record, and especially to the offensive production.
Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've kept you on almost 20 minutes longer than your segment was called for, but I had to let you roll, man, because this has been an absolute amazing conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on board. I hope this is not the only time we'll see you on the show.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking with you. Do you mind if I just do a couple of shouts out to people that I owe a lot of credit to? Is that okay?
Please do.
Okay. So like I said, Michael Page is the one who set up our website, the beardownreport.com. He's the founder. It started as a website with some film breakdown and some blogging and analysis. And then I think, a mutual friend of ours, Ryan Dangle, got on board and started really greasing the wheels. And we started podcasting, Ryan and me, and then Logan Bradley and Brendan Shagru, who set this all up. And he just joined our podcast. Great guy, really good analysis. He's excellent in the Bears community. So you can see, I am so new to the Twitter world. And you can see that if you go see my Twitter account, but you can see my handle down there. I hope that you will, give me a follow and give the Bear Down Report a follow. There's a lot there.
Already have, at least on my end.
Good. Thank you. But I mean, there's film breakdown on beardownreport.com. There's staff predictions. After the game, Ryan does some really great quick hitters in response to the game. All of our podcasts are up. Just recently, Ryan got to interview Adrian Peterson.
Awesome.
Yeah, which was really cool. And Brendan got to interview Eric Kramer. And so those are both up on our podcast. You can get them, everywhere. Apple.
Yeah,
Amazon,
Eric Kramer's been making the rounds.
Yeah.
I wish I had connections to get guys like those on my show. I just be living in Wisconsin. I just don't have those type of connections. But Kramer's been on your show. He's been on used to be called Bears Barroom. I think it's the Barroom Network now with Aldo. I think he was on with Braggs in the Stands with Greg Braggs. I wish him all the best. Eric Kramer still holds the record for the most yards in one season and the most touchdown passes in one season. And the Bears are the only franchise in the history of the NFL that hasn't had a quarterback, and the current teams throw for more than 30 touchdown passes or more. 29 is the Bears' record. And imagine how pathetic that is. And, of course, no passer to throw for over 4,000 yards, 4,000 or more.
I hope this is it, Michael. I mean, we've been waiting like really all our lives. We turn on other games and we watch these proficient offenses, and it's so fun to watch really terrific offense. And all I've ever wanted is for our team, my team, to have that, to have a quarterback that I want to buy the jersey for my kids so they can wear the jersey because they've got a superstar quarterback and a hugely prolific offense that's clicking, that's just clicking and like exciting. Is that, we say all the time on our podcast, is that too much to ask in our lifetime? Could we get that offense in Chicago? Because that would be so epic, so fun.
Do you know the last Bears quarterback, or the quarterback for the Bears team that led the league in passing?
Is it going to be, are we going to go Sid Luckman again? Is that who we always go to?
No, it was 20 years beyond Sid Luckman. Ironically, he wore number 10. It's not Mitch Trubisky, but it was a guy by the name of Rudy Bukic. That the Bears, 1965, the Bears led the league in passing. With that, we're going to have to cut this. I've kept you on way too long, but it's been so much fun, Jack. Appreciate your time. I seriously stay in touch. I hope you'll come on our show again because it's been an absolute great time for me personally.
Thanks,
and Michael. I can't thank you enough. So tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter and in cyberspace, and hopefully you'll come on our show again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Michael. So yeah, you can find us all online at the beardownreport.com. You can find me at jwrightbdr. That's my handle. And then if you tap into that, then you're going to be able to find Michael Page, and you're going to be able to find Ryan Dangle and Brendan Shigeru and Logan Bradley. And I didn't even mention, we have a bevy of just excellent writers as well who do a ton of terrific analysis. So that's where you can find us. Look us up. If
you ever need somebody to write history articles, let me know.
Absolutely, Michael. That'd be great. I learned a lot from you today. I did not know that last factoid that you dropped. That was really fascinating. Thank you.
There's a lot of garbage between these 6 inches right here. But I'll end this with a story, because my wife was one that we're talking about something, and she goes, "Do you remember when?" in something that I was like, "No, I don't remember."
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "You don't remember? This was really important to me." I said, I don't remember. She was, if it was something about the Chicago Bears in 1968, you'd be able to tell me.
Isn't that wild how our memory works like that?
Jack, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
I said,
I understand.
I don't remember much about 1968. And I went on to rattle off, Gale Sayers, his best day as a running back was against Green Bay when he ran for 203 yards, but they actually won the game on a direct free kick when they fair caught a punt, and Mac Percival kicked a direct free kick for 3 points to win the game. That was the year also that Gale Sayers, the very next game, I believe, blew out his knee at home against the 49ers. And last but not least, they fell behind Green Bay on the very last game of the year. All they needed to do was win, and they would have won the division and made the playoffs. And they ended up losing to Green Bay at home on the last game of the year, 28-27. Other than that, there's not much I remember about 1960.
And that's all you're doing, that all from memory.
Yeah.
Oh, that's impressive.
It's
I love your passion, Michael. It's really cool.
Lot of fun. I could tell you a lot of stories about a lot of games if we ever get a chance. Maybe I live in Monroe, and you live on the west side?
Yeah, like northwest suburbs. I mean,
maybe we can meet in Rockford and
sure.
and share some great conversation and commiserate over what's been a 60-year passion of mine.
Absolutely.
So with that, thanks for joining us, everybody. join me on Sunday at 10:30 for the Halatek Hall pregame show, where we'll go over the inactives, we'll go over some keys to the game, and just to have some more Bears chat. It's just me, so bear with me, no pun intended, and we'll have a good time on Sunday. And then next week, I don't have my guest list in front of me, but we've got another great show. Cam Ellis and Lester Wolfong.
Oh wow! Yeah,
our guests next week, and then Kenneth Davis is my guest on the show for the 29th, and I'm still looking for my second half guest, which hopefully will be Kevin. Because I want him to be on that show because it's the 29th. And as we talked about earlier, the Arlington Park racing card ends on the 25th. So I'm expecting to hear some news about the finalists for this bidding process. So, Jack, again, thank you so much. I hope you become a regular watcher of the show, and we'll see you next time. Thanks everybody.
Go Bears.